What's up, guys? I want to welcome you. I want to first say that I hope that I don't botch this too bad because I don't do well speaking in front of camera, but if I'm going to do this YouTube thing, I got to give it a shot. So I want to give you some backstory and a little bit of history on who I am, how I got into the ecotech scene, maybe some education and kind of just what brought me to where I am today and what I plan on doing in the future. Before we start getting these videos going, I get a little teaser, for you with the dyno and whatnot. But yeah, I want to introduce myself. Like I said, my name is Josh Billheimer. I've been in the game, the ecotech game, since 2006. Late 2006 is when I bought my first Redline. And the reason I bought my Redline was I dated a girl who lived across the street from a Chevy dealership, and directly outside the window was a Cobalt SS supercharged. I remember going over there and paying more attention to the car than I did her. I, walked across the street multiple times and, read the options list and everything that goes along with that. But of course I was, 16, 17 years old at the time, and I didn't have the money for that. The fortunate thing was a friend that I worked with bought that very car later on. He had a yellow SS supercharged at the time and then bought a red one. This guy would go by the name of Wicked SS on the Cobalt forums, if you remember or were a member. So that's kind of where I got my start. His name was Tom, and Tom was kind of one of the first people to test some things. My memory's a little fuzzy these days, but I want to say that he had an H62, which I'll talk about later on what that is. But anyway, Tom and I became good friends, and we moved in together. I moved here to go to college at University of Northwestern Ohio, and being a young kid, we decided that we were all three gonna, move out and get a place to live. So that's what we did. We'd sit up at night and talk about things that we read on the forums and whatnot. I was on the Redline forums looking for a car at the time, and Tom's like, well, why don't you look at Redlines? And it's the same engine and all this, and you can save a bunch of money because, like I said, at this time the Cobalts were new, and $21,000, $22,000, I just couldn't afford it. I was going back and forth to school, and it wasn't working out. So I started looking at Redlines and realized that I could get, a pretty nice one, maybe a couple years old, for, $10,000, $12,000. I think I paid $13,000 for mine. I got it it was a one owner car before I had it, and it was, 13,000 miles, I think. So Tom and I would, go to some back roads and street race around and, see who could best one another and just see how close the cars were. Well, Tom had a little bit more disposable income than I did at the time, so he started buying injectors and, pulleys, and he had a pulley puller at one time. And we were literally, no joke, we were in a Walmart parking lot. I mentioned this kind of in the description of the other video. We were in a Walmart parking lot, and I don't remember why, but we were changing injectors in the parking lot. It was wintertime, unfortunately, and I remember ruining one of my favorite leather coats at the time because I got fuel all over the front of it. But that's kind of what started all this. I saw just how well these cars responded. And in a little bit, I'll tell you kind of some cars I had before that, and kind of some backstory on that. But actually, let's do that now. So when I was 16 years old, I was like every other kid, and I was looking for my first car and what it was going to be. That car ended up being a 1996 Z24 Cavalier. And if anybody knows anything about those, they're not exactly the most reliable thing, but this is 2004, somewhere around there. when the sport compact scene is just exploding, you know, with Hondas, and GM was in the racing program at the time. And I remember going to a Hot Import Nights and seeing a Ion Redline, actually, that they were autocrossing out front, but I didn't have my license at the time, so I couldn't partake in that. But yeah, so that's kind of some history of that. All right, so here is my first car. Yes, it was purple. Yes, I caught a bunch of crap, but I didn't care because it was my first car. I bought it at an auction, and safe to say I got raked over the coals on this one. It was wrecked before I got it, and did a bunch of work on it. And 6 months later, after I bought it, I was hit, got in a collision, and it was actually on spring break. Totaled that, and that left me, you know, looking for a new car. Here I was looking super cool. This is probably 2 months before that happened. So I wrecked that, and I used the insurance money to get a 1993 Z34 Lumina. I grew up around Luminas, and my family always had them, and I loved them. And I remember just checking out the Z34 option. I was like, man, that'd be so cool to have one of those. So that's what I did. I went from the Z24 to a Z34. And you could tell that I don't really like plain vehicles, you know, run of the mill, I guess. So it had to be something special. But like I said, I was going back and forth to school, and this is what I started driving. And I realized quickly that, you know, driving an hour and 10 minutes one way to class wasn't so economical in this old thing. So I started looking for another option, and this around this time I was on the forums, and guys were, you know, giving me links on where I could find a, you know, a clean red line, and, you know, all the research that they had done. So this is me and my grandfather standing in front of the red line. This is probably right after I bought it. You know, it's super clean, and like I said, I got it with 13,000 miles. It must have been a little bit later because I have the tinted corner lights, which everybody did back then. So yeah, that's kind of what it looked like when I first got it. There's a picture of me and my grandma. I love the heck out of my grandparents. They're awesome. But like I told you before, me and my friend were known for, you know, not leaving well enough alone. So we started, you know, putting pulleys and injectors on it. Well, I decided that I wanted to raise a rev limiter of my car. So we did that. Tuning wasn't exactly our forte, and this thing popped. So this is actually a picture of me when my grandparents came to visit, and the reason they're there to visit was to help me move an engine that I bought, because I broke cylinder 4 ringlands, and later you'll see some pictures of that. But you know, here's a picture of it. I want to say that, man, I might be wrong on that. It might have been a 2.8 car or 2.9, but you could tell it's got the stock intake on it, and man, even that little thing back there is kind of beat up from, you know, pulling the engine. This is us unloading the new one. There it is sitting in the background. Some more pictures. It's cool going through all this old stuff, isn't it? Here's a picture of me making a mess in their garage later on. And ironically, you can see a cylinder head sitting there in the corner. So like I told you, I was going to college, and I attended college at the University of Northwestern Ohio. I was in a JVS class prior to that in high school, and my instructor said, hey, you know, you really got a talent for this. Maybe you should check it out. So I had an instructor come in from Northwestern Ohio, and they got me. I decided to sign up, and you know, a couple months later, I was you know, enrolled and started out here. I took automotive and high performance, and I guess these are my transcripts or whatever. But you know, just a bunch of different certificates for perfect attendance and whatnot. And Let's see here. Just some more of that. Same old. Electrical, automatics, high performance drive lines, automotive engine performance. There's an ACE award. You know, so I earned my stripes, so to speak, going there. Nothing too big. Like I said, I earned my stripes going there, learned a lot, and realized that there was a lot that I didn't know. But one class in particular really stuck out. So in that class, you take apart a cylinder head, you would measure everything, you would flow it stock, and then you would make changes and you'd flow it again and just see kind of how you were doing. I quickly realized that there was a lot to be had there. I was not very skilled at it back then, but I had a lot of help from instructors and, you know, people who could kind of guide me along the way. That cylinder head would actually sit in my basement till, I don't know, 2 or 3 years later. I graduated college and would start another job in maintenance at a nursing home. And in the process of that, you know, I was always itching. I wanted to put that cylinder head on my car. Never had really had the chance or the space to do it. But I was living with somebody at the time, and I decided, you know what, now's the best time to do it. So I started taking apart the cylinder head. I started taking apart the car. I was doing it in a one-car garage, and I had, at the time I had a bunch of applications out looking for a job, somewhere to work. Not many people would give me a chance because I didn't have any experience. Even though I had, you know, all this, it did nothing for me. I had no credentials, you know, so I was doing my best to try to find a job, but in the meantime, I was making do. But I was in the garage, you know, messing around. I had a Craigslist ad out for some wheels, and this guy contacted me and came to look at them, and he kind of peeked behind me and was like, "What do you got going on back there?" Well, back there I was porting a cylinder head. Not only mine, but I think I was doing Jordan's, who is 10-Pen on the Redline forums, if you remember him. I believe, like I said, my memory might be a little fuzzy, but I was working on a cylinder head. He said, what do you got going on besides, you know, what was apparent out in front? And I said, well, you know, I do a little bit of cylinder head work for me and my friends, and, you know, nothing too crazy. And I said, you know, I'm trying to find a job, and nobody will hire me. So he told me, he said, hey, why don't you come up to the Honda dealership right up the street, put an application in on Monday. You know, I think we can get you in there. Great. So I went in there, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed on Monday morning, dressed probably way too sharp for the job that I was applying for. But you know, I sat down in front of the service manager and feel like we hit it off. And I've been there for 9 years. And over the course of the 9 years, I've, you know, always done the Ecotech thing on the side, and always modded my own car, and my boss always thought it was cool, you know. So over that time, you know, my abilities have grown. You know, I was fresh out of college and, you know, thought I knew everything. Well, I quickly learned that I don't, or didn't, and I still don't. But, you know, I was always the guy who would do the heavy line work and engine diagnostics and things like that. It's just, I love that stuff. I was always really good at it in college, and it just kind of just stuck. It was natural. You know, so check engine lights or engine noise, or I was that guy, you know. Engine swaps all the time back then. Not so much of it lately, but we had a big problem with piston rings on the Honda Odysseys and the 4-cylinder K-Series Accord for oil consumption. Well, guess who did a bunch of them? This guy right here. And I got really good at it. I loved it. But it also made me really good at working on Ecotechs, because I learned a lot of new things and, you know, had a lot of new tools, and, you know, my skills were developing. And in the process, Honda has a program where you can get certified through the manufacturer. And, my boss kind of pushed those courses on me. I attended our local training center here multiple times, went through the whole process of online training and in-class training. And now I'm actually Honda Master Certified as of last summer. So after getting my certification, I decided to treat myself to a little present. And this would be a 2002 Z06 Corvette, which you'll see in later videos. I flew out to Las Vegas and drove it back, and it was just an amazing adventure. I couldn't ask for anything cooler than that, especially for an award, so to speak, for finishing up my my Honda Master certification. But I guess I should touch on the fact of where that black red line ended up. I never said this publicly because it kind of hit home. But like I said, I was pretty deep into that. I decided that after going from the M62, it went turbo. It was on E85. Of course, it had a ported head after all that I said earlier. I got to the point where it ran out of fuel system and kind of left it there on the TVS and decided to go turbo, and that's kind of what happened. The turbo went out on me. I took it apart, and while it was out for getting rebuilt, I decided, I was gonna wire tuck this thing and ABS delete and just go full drag mode on it. But being an adult got the best of me, and I decided that it just wasn't a smart move at the time. It was a very difficult decision, but I decided to part that car out. I sold a bunch of really high-end, good parts that I had been collecting, for the build over, the last 3 or 4 years. I had a sleeve block that I had sold, and the whole fuel system, and I mean, you name it. And then that turned into me parting the actual car out, which I still have some of the things in the basement, old seals and electrical components and whatnot. But I sold that so I could help pay off my student loans. I wanted to get kind of ahead of the game, and just having that kind of financial burden on me and all this money, all this money wrapped up into this project, like I said, it just wasn't worth it at the time. And I just bought the Corvette and, kind of fell in love with that, honestly. So I just had a daily, little Honda Accord that I bought, had a blown engine and swapped that out, and was driving it. And decided that, man, I really, really miss the red line. I hadn't driven it in over a year, but, kind of got over it, like I said, after having a Z06. But in the back of my mind, I was like, man, I'll probably always have the want for another Ecotec. I'm working on people's cars, and people are sending me cylinder heads over the last, decade, literally. And watching everybody else progress and, just make them faster, I decided, man, I kind of want to be a part of that. But, here I am being an adult again. I didn't want to get too crazy with it. So I bought a very clean example of a Ion Redline, 2005, from a woman named Karen who bought it brand new in 2005. She had it dealer serviced at her local dealership, and took immaculate care of this thing. I mean, I couldn't ask for a better platform. And I told myself, this thing's gonna stay stock. I'm gonna leave it alone. I'm just gonna drive it. Well, this has been 6 months that I said that, and Taylor Lear, Infrared Line, if you guys remember, he sent me a set of 42s, and I have a blower sitting around, and I'm like, man, this thing, let's put a ported blower on it, because it probably needs a rebuild, and the bearings are noisy. Probably needs a coupler. Never had supercharger oil changed or anything like that. The original clutch. It's on the original clutch at 224,000 miles. I got it back and did a timing change as soon as I got home. But like I said, I couldn't have asked for a better candidate. I intended on keeping it stock, but I want to do more for you guys, and it just doesn't make sense for me to have such a great platform, a test car, sitting around, and I'm sitting around thinking, maybe it's time that I start doing some things. So me being the gearhead I am, I started looking around and found some deals on some used engine parts and some of the stuff, exactly the same thing that you guys are going to do. You start from scratch and all that, but you can find these deals just like I did. I found some engine parts the other day with had head studs, pistons, rods, neutral balance shafts, all of which I intend on using, had valve springs, and I'm like, man, this is a perfect recipe, to show you guys what these cars can do, what they're capable of, what I know that they're capable of, and what I want to prove to you guys. Some of you know this stuff, some of you probably never even heard of it, but that's my intention. I want to kind of start from stock and go from there. I'm going to go to the same dyno every time I do a test. I am no tuner. I'm going to outsource that through a couple of friends in the community. They've already agreed to help me out, and maybe I'll learn a few things, but I am not a tuner. That is one thing that I just don't trust to put my work on, and so I guess I should maybe tell you a little bit more about Category V Portworks, Cat-5. Why I picked the name, and where it came from, and a little backstory on that. Like I said, I've been porting Ecotech cylinder heads primarily since 2008. First, it was my own. I saw how well it performed, and then it turned into some local guys. Hey, can you do mine? Sure, and I was doing it for a lot less than I am today. Not making hardly enough to even cover my materials. But I wanted to have cars out there and test these theories, things that I learned, and they all did really well. I realized that this is a great addition to Ecotechs. After experiencing it for myself, I said, well, maybe it's time to reach out there and start doing it more. Over the last 10, 12 years, I've done numerous Ecotechs. 2.2, 2.4, LNF, LHU, of course LSJ, almost every Ecotech casting that is offered, not some of the new stuff. But everything along the way, and I've got my name now on a lot of record-setting cars. Stock bottom-in LSJ car. Jason Widowson's his 349 horsepower M62. Now it is ported. It's a ported M62, but makes 349 horsepower. The previous record to that was 319, I believe, by Al McClure. And that's been a couple years since he's done that. We put together a heck of a combo on Jason's car. He did his own single pass intake manifold, which I plan on covering in future videos. He did his own intake. That's, just not the whole K&N thing that everybody's used to, or running stock. And, so he's out there and broke the record by almost 32 horsepower, 31 horsepower. And backs it up at the track. He drives this thing to and from the track with his slicks in the back seat. And his best time to date is a 12:09. I'm not really sure of the mile per hour offhand, But he also has one of those rare H62s that I touched on a little bit earlier. He made 387, I believe, which is another, can't really say it's a record because there's not that many people who have the option to run that H62. The H62 was rumored to be a test bed for the then later 1320. It's got a lot of similarities, but the developers sent out, I want to say 5 or 10 units. And they were supposed to be sent back, but some of them slipped through the cracks. It's a high helix twist on the rotors. It's a little bit different than the H62 rotor pack. So it is more efficient than the M62 is. Jason made, like I said, 387, so it's 30 horsepower increase off the top of my head. And I should say that those quarter mile records that he has right now are actually on the M62. It's not even on the H. He's not, nothing too crazy, nothing that you guys can't do. Now he is a heck of a driver and does go to the track, regularly. But like I said, it's nothing that's, out of reach for you guys, the normal consumer. I want to start, offering parts, in the future. Some ideas that I have going. But, until then, I'm going to go through what's kind of already offered. I got, multiple sets of camshafts here. I want to, kind of just build it up. I'm also on a budget. I'm not rich by any means. I will be working this in and out of my, my home life, work schedule, and on top of my porting, that takes a lot of priority to me. And I intend to keep, wait times at a minimum, but I do want to kind of integrate, this little project into what I'm doing. Just so I can prove, what we're doing. It's not just, I can tell you that you can make X amount of power, but, what better way to prove that than to show you guys, in a video firsthand, just how to do that. There's a lot of things that people ask frequently on the forums, on Facebook forums, and it's just a lot of misinformation and things that people just don't know or don't know how to do properly. And like I said, I've been a technician for 10 years now, so I've learned a lot, and I've learned a lot of right ways that I used to do wrong, and I want to show you guys how to do that. Like I said, this is going to be some basic information for a lot of you guys, but some of you guys are, you've never even done an oil change on your car. So I want to go through, how to do a compression test, how to do a leak down test. If anything pops up on the car as far as a concern that needs diagnosed, I want to kind of walk you guys through that. I want to show you how to install gauges. I want to, the whole nine. Everything that I do, I want to document and show to you guys. Just so you don't have to rely on Facebook trolls to, hopefully they give you the right information. I tried my best to, to help out and give information, and I've had a lot of guys message me, and, I try to walk them through that, but there's just a lot of stuff that you don't even know. I tell people to do a compression test or a leak down, but they're scared because how do you do that? And instead of sending them a video of somebody doing it on, some other car, what better way than to show them exactly how to do it on the car that we're talking about? So this is all stuff that you guys can do. You can rent the tools or borrow the tools, whatever, to do a lot of these basic tests, and you could see if your car is even healthy enough that you should be modifying it. People are astonished that the car that I have makes factory horsepower numbers, and it's got 224,000 miles. I will say it's uncommon, but it's been taken care of, and it just speaks. It's the proof. I want to, in the next video, I want to show you guys how to do, like I said, a compression test, a leak down. a fuel pressure test, some of the basics that you guys need to know before you start modifying it, or, because you could find a lot of the underlying issues before, you get to the dyno and you make, 30 horsepower less than what everybody said you should. And you can figure out why that is, or have a pretty good assumption on what's going on, where to look, so you don't have to be in the dark and, sit around hoping you find the right information and tearing apart, waste money and, parts cannon, fixes at these things. These things are pretty simple to work on. I've worked on all kinds of different stuff, and man, they are literally my favorite engine to work on. They're so simple. It's a good design. They have their shortcomings and whatnot, but I hope to kind of aid in some of those things in the near future with parts, or things that I think will work, and just kind of, like I said, start from square one. So I won't drag this on anymore. I want to thank you guys for all the support that you've given me over the years, and just help me become as popular as I am when it comes to Ecotech work and whatnot. So again, thank you. I'm sure that I missed a ton of information, and like I said, this is my first time doing anything like this. So excuse me, don't be too hard on me in the comments, but I'm looking forward to taking you guys along for this ride. So thanks.